My name is Ethan. I am 22 years old. I am going to graduate from Harvard next year. And right now, I am in the middle of job hunting. When I say I am from Harvard, people tend to think job hunting must be easy for you, or it must be nice to have your pick of companies. But that is not always the case. Take me, for instance. I have always been a shy person. It seems I have been that way since the day I was born. My mom says with a serious face, even your first cry was hesitant, so I guess it is just how I am wired. I have an older brother, and he is as wild as they come. Mom says she was actually relieved to hear my faint cry, because she had been worried about how to raise another troublemaker if I had turned out like my brother. So I grew up without anyone trying to change my shy nature. My parents treated me like I was made of glass, and my brother kept the bullies away. You do not need to force yourself to play with friends, honey. If you would rather read at home, that is just fine. Okay, I understand. Do not worry, Ethan. I will look out for you. If anyone picks on you at school, you tell me right away, do you hear? Yes, thanks, brother. Thanks to my family's protection, I have kept my shy personality all these years. School was part of the reason I never developed social skills, I think. For me, school was just incredibly boring. Not to brag, but I have always been a quick learner. My parents were not interested in early education, so I did not get any special schooling. But when I became fascinated with trains at 3, I learned to read all the station names along the routes. I had mastered my multiplication tables before kindergarten. In my last year of preschool, I discovered the Fibonacci sequence on my own and was left speechless by the beauty of those numbers. I can pretty much remember anything I see once, and I can work out complex calculations in my head easily. Until I started elementary school, I thought everyone was like that. So my first day of school was a real eye-opener, to say the least. The other kids could barely write, let alone read. They kept talking even when the teacher told them to be quiet. Some were even wandering around the room. And when we opened our textbooks, I could not believe my eyes. 1 plus 2 equal? Do we really need to learn this? But when class started, some kids actually took time to figure out 1 plus 2. Is this who I am going to be studying with? I felt utterly hopeless. I had a bad feeling, so I borrowed my brother's 6th grade textbook. Sure enough, it was full of material that was way too easy. This geometry stuff is difficult. No matter how many times the teacher explains it, I just cannot understand it. I see, I guess that is how it is. That is when I gave up on school. I still went because I did not want my parents to worry, but I just read books all day. For better or worse, our school library was pretty well stocked, so I never ran out of reading material. If I could not find what I wanted there, I would go to the public library. Thanks to all that reading, my academic skills kept improving. That is how I spent elementary school, then middle school, and finally high school. My high school was a bit more academically focused, so I made some friends I could actually talk to. But being shy by nature, I did not suddenly become very popular. I ended up with about 2 friends I would eat lunch with. Still, it was better than elementary and middle school, I think. And then, I got into Harvard. Even in high school, I still loved studying, and I had plenty of time since I did not really go out much, so getting into Harvard was not that surprising. Of course, my parents and brother praised me from the bottom of their hearts, but they also said multiple times that they always knew I could get into Harvard. Even though your father and I only went to regular colleges, Ethan's intelligence is truly a gift from heaven. It is only natural for Ethan, since he is on a whole different level of smart. But if there are any weird people or anyone who bothers you at college, tell your big brother right away. I will teach them a lesson. I will be fine now. But thank you. I was the only one from my high school to get into Harvard. To be honest, when I first started college, it was surprisingly enjoyable. Everyone was casually reading the philosophy books I liked, and the amount of knowledge people had was incredible, so every conversation was stimulating. It is fair to say that for the first time in my life, I felt relieved to see that there were so many people in the world who could actually study properly. Moreover, surprisingly, everyone was very sociable as well. They would create new clubs with their friends, have drinking parties, and I was invited to join a few times. However, I could not say anything particularly interesting or witty. Despite that, others would crack jokes and get huge laughs or have enjoyable conversations. Seeing my classmates do things I could never do, I felt thoroughly defeated. They say heaven does not give two gifts, but here were so many people who were both good at studying and sociable. Eventually, I retreated back into my shy personality. As I spent my college life like this, before I knew it, I was in my third year, and it was time for job hunting. While my friends around me started seriously jobs hunting, I felt like I was being crushed by anxiety and nervousness. It was not that I was anxious about entering society. I was worried about whether I could appeal to companies as someone who deserves to be chosen during this job hunting process. As I started job hunting, the career counselor told me to first do self-analysis. I was taught how to make a chart and told to analyze my strengths, what I wanted to do, and my personality. I stumbled at this self-analysis stage. Being shy and not good with people, I am not suited for jobs that involve interacting with others. While I might be considered intelligent by general standards, I lack self-confidence. My classmates were confidently listing their selling points, like achievements from internships or studying abroad experiences, but I had nothing. I wonder if I can properly job hunt. What if I cannot find a job? My head was constantly full of such worries, and days passed where I could not even write my resume. But deep down, I always had a desire to do something for others, and that feeling became the force pushing me forward. During my college years, I actively participated in volunteer activities. Not like my classmates who volunteered in disaster areas, but at a local nursing home for the elderly. Those activities held a special meaning for me, because they reminded me of my grandfather. I loved my grandfather very much. My grandfather only finished middle school and worked in a factory until retirement, but he knew about all sorts of things. Whether it was economics or art and culture, I always believed that my grandfather would know the answer to anything. My grandfather lived in the neighborhood, about a 10-minute walk away, but even after my grandmother passed away, he continued to live alone instead of moving in with us. Is not it inconvenient living alone? Why do not you live with us? We even made a comfortable room for you. No, living alone is more comfortable for me. My grandfather said this, but our whole family knew it was out of consideration for us. That is why we respected his wishes and lived separately. However, my grandfather had always had bad legs, and gradually it became difficult for him to go shopping. So I often helped by bringing meals to my grandfather's house, and he was especially fond of me for doing so. Ethan, you have a good head shape. With that head, please help lots of people. Can I help people because I have a good head shape? That is right. You look like my father, Ethan. My father also had an excellent head shape, and he was incredibly smart. I see. The good thing about my grandfather was that he praised the shape of my head, not my test scores. And he did not fuss over me more than necessary, but rather left me be. That is why I would visit my grandfather's house even when I did not have to help out. After all, I did not have friends at school, so I had plenty of time after classes. There were days when I just sat at my grandfather's house, absent-mindedly drinking juice, but that was fine too. However, my grandfather's legs gradually got worse, and by the time I was in high school, he could not even stand up on his own. My grandfather, being considerate of us again, decided to enter an elderly care facility on his own. Why do not you live with us now? We would feel more at ease that way. That is right. I can clean your room and do your laundry every day. There is no need to go to such a distant facility. Grandpa, let us live together in this house. Despite our attempts to persuade him, my grandfather stubbornly kept shaking his head. It is easier for old folks to live with other old folks in many ways. Just come visit me once every 6 months. That will be enough. He said this with a smile as he entered the elderly care facility, but his wish would not be fulfilled. Because just a month later, My grandfather had a heart attack and passed away at the facility. Our family deeply regretted it. Maybe grandfather did not really want to go to the facility. Even with his bad legs, if we had all worked together, we might have managed to help him live in that house. Perhaps because we insisted on living together, grandfather deliberately chose the facility. Because of us, we let grandfather be alone. It was because we lost grandfather in this way that I started volunteering at elderly care facilities, seeking traces of him. Maybe I wanted to atone for what we could not do for grandfather by doing it for other elderly people. But that volunteer work gave me a sense of fulfillment I never expected. Since I do not have a caregiver qualification, there was only so much I could do at the facility. What I could do was be a conversation partner, help them walk to the bathroom, or hang out laundry. Still, when I, who was about the same age as their grandchildren, would visit, everyone would greet me with smiles. "Oh, you look just like my grandson. So, what is your name?" I would tell the same old man my name every time. "You are tall and handsome. Would you mind keeping me company for a bit?" I would kneel beside the wheelchair of an old lady and listen to her. There, I could talk without any nervousness. Kind words naturally came out of my mouth, and I found myself smiling naturally. I interacted with the elderly as if it were the most natural thing, and I could even make them smile. "Thank you for today too, Ethan." When an old lady would smile and speak to me, her smile would warmly envelop my heart. "No, thank you for always sharing interesting stories with me." Through volunteer activities, I learned the importance of human connections and helping each other. I think that experience gave deep meaning to my life and enriched my heart. As I recall those times, my depressed feelings gradually lifted. All right, let us give this self-analysis another push. I renewed my determination and started writing down my personality traits in a notebook to somehow find my selling points. A few days later, I finally managed to create something like a chart of myself. My strengths are, although common, having concentration and being able to think about things logically. And what I am interested in is robotics. I want to try developing robots that can help with people's daily lives, especially the elderly. Based on the chart, I was finally able to create my resume. I even had my brother, who was nearby, look at it, and he gave it his seal of approval. No one would not want to interview you after seeing this resume. Plus, you are from Harvard, right? If you speak confidently in the interview, you will get job offers from anywhere. Good luck. Thank you, brother. My brother, knowing my personality, had apparently anticipated from the beginning that I would be struggling with job hunting. When I was holed up in my room, he would casually come in and kindly speak to me. "Ethan, are you okay?" "Yeah, I think I will manage somehow." "I see. Keep at it." My brother's kind words and smile always soothed my heart. Additionally, he would always make coffee for me at just the right time or invite me for walks. That is why I wanted my brother to see the resume I had finally completed. Also, since he was already working as a professional, I thought he could view it from a company's perspective. I immediately decided to apply to several companies. Targeting robotics development companies, I pressed the entry buttons while trying to contain my excitement. At university, everyone was talking about job hunting. It seemed some of the early birds had already received job offers. "Hey, Ethan, long time no see. How is your job hunting going?" A classmate I ran into asked casually, as if making small talk. "Yeah, well, it is progressing a little bit," I answered with a smile, but in reality, I had only just finished writing my resume. Internally, my anxiety and nervousness were building up. "You are smart, Ethan, so you can probably get in anywhere. I have got 3 job offers, but I did not get the one I really wanted." "What? You have already received job offers?" I looked genuinely surprised, which in turn seemed to surprise my classmate. "Yeah, well, apparently, some places give out offers pretty quickly. A lot of other guys have probably got offers too." "I see. Well, let us both do our best. These days, you probably will not work at one company for your whole life, but we want to go to companies where we can find fulfillment and build our careers, right?" "That is true. The classmate spotted another acquaintance and left, leaving me standing there at a loss. While I was struggling with self-analysis, job hunting was already over for everyone else. As always, I could not feel confident about my experiences and abilities. While other students were deciding on their employment, I felt overwhelmed with impatience and anxiety every day. Around me, there was an abundance of stories that I found enviable, who got accepted where, who turned down which offer. As for me, even with the resume my brother had strongly approved, of course it did not pass the document screening at every company. After all, there are a limited number of robotics development companies, and the competition is fierce. But somewhere inside, there was a feeling that I did not want to give up, because I had a desire to do something for people. Amidst all this, I finally received my first notification of passing the document screening. When I saw that email, I literally jumped for joy. On the day of the interview, I was hit with tremendous nervousness and anxiety. I went to the bathroom many times from the morning, and my shirt was soaked with strange sweat. Still, I somehow made it to the interview venue, but by the time I arrived, I was completely exhausted. And then, the fateful interview. The result was, it did not go well at all. As expected, I could not speak well in front of the interviewer, and I stumbled over my words from the beginning. Once I stumbled, I could barely speak properly after that, to the point where even I did not know what I was saying. When I arrived at the venue, I was first shocked in the waiting room. There were more students there than I had expected. To think that only a few people would be chosen from among these, was it not impossible for me? Just as I was about to panic from anxiety, my name was called. With my heart pounding, a mix of nervousness and expectation, I stood before the interviewer. "I am Ethan. Pleased to meet you." I managed to squeeze out my self-introduction, but my voice was clearly shaking from nervousness, and I realized how unconfident I was. The interviewer looked at me with a kind expression, but there was a sharpness in the depths of their eyes. Noticing that made me even more flustered. "Ethan, what made you interested in robotics development?" Even to that question, I could not answer well due to my nervousness. I mumbled and stumbled over my words. Why was I so nervous? In the end, for some reason, I found myself apologizing. "I'm sorry." I could only apologize sincerely. My heart felt like it was about to burst with regret for my own inadequacy. The interview continued, but my frustration and impatience grew as I couldn't speak well no matter how hard I tried. In the end, even the people in the group interview with me were laughing at me, and I was at a complete loss about myself. All right, that concludes the interview. At the next company where I had an interview, I repeated the same mistakes. I introduced myself in front of the interviewer, but due to nervousness, my voice shakes and I can't express myself well. My heart races, my thoughts become jumbled, and I stutter. I'm Ethan. Pleased to meet you." My voice was small due to nervousness, and I felt pathetic about my lack of confidence. The interviewers smiled at me, but their smiles did nothing to ease my anxiety. The questions begin. I try to shake my head mentally and concentrate, but my anxiety only grows. "Ethan, why did you apply to our company?" I can't gather my thoughts to answer that question well either. Not knowing what to say, I stutter again. "Well, My words trail off again, and I'm disappointed in myself for not being able to say what I want to say. Why am I so nervous? In the middle of the interview, I despaired as I lost sight of my future. The interviewers quietly look at me, waiting for my answer. But I can't find the words. Only a feeling of despair pierces my chest, and that day's interview ended. On my way home after the interview, I reflected on my failure. No matter how I thought about it, I only felt regret and pain. It's over. I keenly felt my own inadequacy, and anxiety about the future weighed heavily on me. Why couldn't I speak well? What was I lacking? The more I thought about it, the deeper I seemed to sink. When I got home feeling dejected, my mother was waiting for me with a worried look. "Ethan, how did it go?" "I failed." "It's over." My mother tried to encourage me, saying things like, "It's okay, and there's always next time. But in my depressed state, even those words didn't register. Even after returning to my room, I couldn't get that day's interview out of my head, and my anxiety grew. It felt like I was sinking into the depths of despair, unable to see my future. But I had to do something. I decided to review my resume once again. I had initially summarized it so it could be used for companies in any industry, but I decided to rewrite it to fully express my passion for robotics development companies. Is this good enough? As I looked at the rewritten resume, anxious feelings crossed my mind. But there's no turning back now. I resolved to take a step forward to pursue my dreams. I have to do my best with this. Having made up my mind, I sent out my application documents to take the first step towards my future. And finally, the day of the interview with my first choice company arrived. With my heart pounding and my hands sweating, I headed to the interview venue. The destination was an inconspicuous office among a row of formal-looking buildings. However, believing that the door to my dreams was waiting inside, I took a step forward. I approached the entrance and confidently gave my name at the reception, and was immediately guided to the room where the interviewers were waiting. I felt like I might tremble just knocking on the door, but I managed to control myself and knock. "Yes, come in." I flinched at that voice, but took a deep breath and opened the door. There sat the interviewers with imposing postures. Their eyes were fixed on me, which made me even more nervous. But having learned from my previous failure, I was determined to approach the interview with more confidence. Despite the nervousness and anxiety, I decided to face it with a positive attitude, believing in my own abilities. As I entered the room, naturally, all the interviewers' eyes were on me. But this time, I introduced myself confidently without being intimidated by their gazes. "I'm Ethan. Pleased to meet you." I announced my name as confidently as I could. My voice was shaking slightly from nervousness, but I decided not to mind it. Some of the interviewers welcomed me with smiles, but those smiles did nothing to ease my heart. Their eyes were fixed on me, and my nervousness only increased. "Well then, let's begin the interview." In front of the interviewers, I talked about my strengths and motivation for applying. My strength is problem-solving ability. Also, I have curiosity and enthusiasm for new technologies and ideas. By working at this company, I want to maximize my abilities and contribute to technological progress. Once I made up my mind, the words flowed out naturally. I learned from my previous failure not to hesitate midway, and I was able to clearly convey my strengths and motivation. The interviewers listened to my words with interest. "Thank you, Ethan. Such an ambitious attitude would be welcomed at our company," one of the interviewers said with a smile. Those words brightened my heart as if by magic. "Thank you very much." Being able to properly convey my thoughts, a kind of confidence was budding in my heart. Questions came from other interviewers as well. I calmly answered each question one by one. Applying what I learned from my previous failure, I answered calmly without rushing. By the end of the interview, confidence and satisfaction were growing within me. I felt that I was able to convey my thoughts more calmly than last time. All right, that concludes our standard questions. From here, we'll allow the interviewers to ask questions freely. Does anyone have any questions for Ethan? The youngest interviewer sitting at the edge said, looking around at the other interviewers. Everyone seemed to be thinking for a moment, so I took this chance to breathe a sigh of relief internally. However, at that moment, one of the interviewers raised their hand. The panel indicated they were Sales Manager Thompson. "May I ask something?" "Huh? Oh yes, please go ahead." For some reason, the young employee became flustered. Manager Thompson was a person who looked every bit the career woman. Moreover, she seemed like an impenetrable career woman. During the interview, there were moments when the atmosphere lightened and laughter occurred, but Manager Thompson alone maintained a stern expression, glaring at me. Being a Harvard graduate, I suppose your IQ must be quite high, right? Caught off guard by this unexpected question, I stumbled over my words. Panic and confusion crossed in my mind, and I had no idea how to respond. The other interviewers waited quietly, But that silence made me even more flustered. Once again, self-loathing spread due to my own inadequacy, and the tension seemed to crush my heart. I'm sorry, I opened and closed my mouth several times, but words wouldn't come out. Feeling my own weakness and helplessness, I took a deep breath. I was admitted to Harvard, but I haven't measured my IQ since then. However, I did have it measured as a child at my parents' suggestion. At that time, it was 130. There was a murmur of "wow," as expected, and I flinched for a moment, but then continued strongly. But I believe that not only academic performance and ability, but also experience and human qualities are important. I was able to answer with confidence in my own words. The interviewers looked surprised, and there was a brief silence as I suddenly spoke more forcefully after being somewhat timid until then. But after that, they smiled and asked me the next question. I answered that question confidently too, clearly conveying my thoughts. Their eyes were on me, giving me satisfied looks. However, there was one person who was looking at me with irritation. It was Manager Thompson. I never thought you'd actually brag about your IQ. As expected of a Harvard student, aren't you getting carried away? No, that wasn't my intention. I just answered because I was asked. At this, Manager Thompson raised her eyebrows even more. What? Are you saying it's my fault? Really, I can't believe young people these days. The other interviewers were trying to calm down Manager Thompson, who was getting angry all by herself, but they seemed unable to intervene. It must always be like this with her. As I started to speak, Manager Thompson interrupted loudly, as if on purpose. An IQ of 130 without any achievements is just decoration. Go home. Being told to go home during an interview. I understand. I had no choice but to leave the room with my head down. The next day, as I was at home feeling pessimistic, my cell phone suddenly rang. It rang once, then again. Hello, this is Ethan. The person on the other end was an unexpected caller. Hello, is this Ethan? Thank you for coming to our interview yesterday. This is the CO. Huh? What? I'm sorry for calling so suddenly. No, well, I never thought I'd get a direct call from the CEO of my first choice company. And I thought I had completely failed the interview. I could barely speak properly. Maybe because the blood rushed to my head. I don't remember what we talked about after that. I only remember being told to come to the company again the next day, and him saying, "We've been waiting for you." The next day, I headed to the company again. My heart was pounding, full of nervousness and expectation. As soon as I arrived, I was shown to the CEO's office. With my heart racing, I knocked and opened the door to find the CEO there. As I stood there, completely stiff with tension at its peak, the CEO smiled kindly at me. "Ethan, it's been a while." Huh? A while? I was just dumbfounded, not understanding. Then the CEO said with a smile, "Don't you remember? You won a prize in a robotics contest when you were in middle school, right?" I was one of the judges at that time. I couldn't hide my surprise at the CEO's words. "What? You mean from that time?" I did indeed participate in a robotics contest when I was in middle school. And in that contest, I received a special judge's award for a robot I made, hoping it would help my grandfather who had bad legs. I've never been able to forget your passion and talent for robot development since then. I absolutely wanted you to work at this company. I was both surprised and moved by the CEO's words. To think that my past efforts and passion had led to this encounter today. But after yesterday's interview, I thought it was over. The CEO's expression became a bit more serious. "You do seem quite shy indeed." "Yes, everyone has areas where they lack confidence. That's why it's important to increase the areas where you do have confidence. You have passion and intellect for robotics. If you focus on developing those, I'm sure they'll become your source of confidence." Then, with a wry smile, he added, "I'm sorry you had an unpleasant experience during the interview. Actually, she's capable, but has a severe complex about academic background. I believe she tried for Harvard for 4 years before giving up. Because of that, she tends to show hostility when she hears Harvard. Having such a person as a manager seems problematic in a way. As I was thinking this, it seemed the CEO shared the same opinion. I was shocked when I saw her evaluation of your interview. It was quite low. When I thought something was off and investigated, I found out you were from Harvard. We've decided to have her leave the headquarters. I see. Later, after joining the company, I learned that Manager Thompson had been transferred to a small branch office in another state. A Harvard graduate like that, whose all appearance and no substance, will be useless anyway. It seems her academic background complex is still evident even at the branch office, but now I'm determined to prove her wrong by showing that I'm more than just my academic credentials. This is all thanks to the CEO of this company and my family, who taught me the purpose and method of gaining confidence. Creating robots that can help people like my grandfather in this company that has recognized me for who I am. I believe my dream starts from here.